If we don't see a problem, we won't respond to it. But we have a big problem. Too much of the virtual rather than the real, too much of the artificial as opposed to the natural. And this has become so much a part of the fabric of life today, it's very easy for us, I think, to miss this problem. So it's worth, for starters, just going into it for a moment and reflecting. The virtual versus the real. I'm not saying the virtual in itself is bad, but I think we all feel intuitively that there's an imbalance, especially following the pandemic and being kind of forced to do a bunch of things virtually. We've seen how that's kind of panned out. There's so many things now we still do virtually, and I'm not saying that they're all bad. But I think, again, we're starting to see more. We're suffering from the lack of real presence and are kind of overdoing the virtual. It's understandable. There's something in human nature where if we're given a kind of easier way, a path of least resistance, we tend to keep following it. Virtual contact tends to be less threatening than being in the flesh, for instance. Now, I'm not saying that the easier way is necessarily wrong, but surely, too often, we end up sacrificing something important, something richer in the name of ease. And we need to be realistic and honest about that. How about the artificial versus the natural? Here, I'm just thinking of so many gadgets, so many things that have separated us from the natural world, from natural substances. This happens on so many levels, but just look around. It's not just the young. It's kind of easier for us older people to look at the young and say, they don't know how to do much with their hands. They don't know how to craft stuff. They don't recognize trees. They don't know where they are in place. Right? They have so many, as it were, machines and technologies that do stuff for them that they have been removed from contact. Right? They don't know where their food comes from. Does this matter? I think on an intuitive level, we know that it does because there's something very important in our life about the real and the natural. So what can we do? Well, I'm suggesting what I'm calling a preferential option for the real and the natural. And all I mean by the preferential option is recognizing that we're going to have to do a little more to make it happen. It doesn't mean that we only do the real and the natural and become obsessed with it, but the preferential option for it is recognizing we're going to have to cultivate it now more. And I think there's two steps in that, very simple steps. The first is kind of a negative, and the second one is a positive. The first is I'm going to put it this way, be skeptical about the virtual and the artificial. Now, to say this with a little nuance here, to be skeptical doesn't mean to reject it as evil. It just means to take a second look and to take that inquiring, examining approach. So for instance, and some app is recommended to us. Rather than just saying, hey, boom, that sounds convenient. We take a little bit more of a questioning, what I'm calling skeptical. Do I really need this? Might this be just yet another way that I go into the virtual away from the real? Now, maybe we'll decide to get that app, but it certainly won't have hurt us to have taken that approach of being very careful, right? Because we're going to keep having these things pushed at us again and again and again. An example then as regards, say, the artificial. Do we need that machine in our home? Maybe it's the Roomba that's going to sweep our rooms for us rather than using a broom. Maybe we get the Roomba. But Again, I think our default position has tended to be when some technology is presented that is going to do something for us in the name of freeing ourselves up, we just think, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And we don't recognize how we just progressively are getting cut off from, in certain ways, our own bodies and the ability to do things with it and to be in the physical, natural world around us. So now the second step is just the positive one of kind of prioritizing the natural, the real, and the natural. And it's just the flip side. Again, it doesn't mean all that we ever do is the real and the natural, but it means looking for opportunities, looking for ones where there's going to be certain richness there. Maybe we just kind of go traditional. I have two quick examples. The first is build a fire and sit down around it with your loved ones. This is real. This is in the flesh. This kind of presence is so irreplaceable. It's such a simple thing. Let's prioritize real presence like that. My other example, make a garden and work in it with hand tools. Sometimes alone, sometimes with others. Use a trowel. Use a hoe. Through a hoe, you can still feel the soil. Get out there and we can get in contact with the natural world. We can develop skills working in it that are so rich that are real loss when they're all left behind. So let's think about how can we make a preferential option, a kind of choice in favor of the real and the natural. These astounding gifts, they're so much a part of a really human life.